Hello friends! You may have heard that cryoprotection is the most important aspect of cryonics. This procedure prevents the body from freezing and drastically increases the quality of cryopreservation. However, it might surprise you that cryoprotection is not even among the top 3 most important and impactful parts of the entire cryopreservation procedure. I prepared the 7 most impactful and dangerous steps in cryopreservation and the most common mistakes that lead to serious consequences. As a general rule, it is easier to mess up during the early parts of cryopreservation, and the consequences are more serious. Therefore, let's arrange the problems in the order in which you might encounter them. So, what is the first and the most dangerous part of cryopreservation? It may sound weird, but it is actually a relation of relatives and friends to cryopreservation. You can spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a contract with a cryonics organization. However, if people around you do not know about this contract, or they do not support your intentions to be cryopreserved, they can simply ignore your wish and bury or cremate the body. The entire cryopreservation will be lost. And there is really nothing cryonics organizations can do about it. They can provide a client with a special bracelet, pendant or member card, so in case doctors or police are the first to discover a body, they will contact the cryonics organization and everything should be okay. However, if relatives find the body first, they can simply remove a bracelet and pendant before the arrival of doctors and nobody will know. Of course, a cryonics organization after some time will discover what happened. There will be a trial and after a few weeks what remains of the body will be retrieved. It might be important for a cryonics organization, but it's probably not important for a person who is supposed to be cryopreserved, because cryopreservation is already lost. There are 2 news, good and bad. The good news is, judging by case reports, these catastrophic events do happen not so often. Seems like most cryonicists manage to talk to their relatives and friends and receive support. If it is not possible for some reasons, to relocate to another place. The bad news: if you cannot sign a contract with a cryonics organization for any reason, things will be more complicated for you. Not only do you have to convince relatives or friends to help you with the initial steps, they must be ready to accomplish all steps, including long-term storage. What is the second worst thing that might happen? It is late body discovery. Unfortunately, people often die unexpectedly, and human bodies can lie undiscovered for hours or even days. After death, a timer starts ticking. Without cooling, the body deteriorates very quickly. After about 8 to 12 hours, the blood vessels will be destroyed, and it will be impossible to perform cryoprotection. Additionally, the longer the body remains unfound, the bigger the risk it will be sent to autopsy, which will worsen things even more. Luckily, there are multiple ways to prevent these problems and discover the body quickly, especially these days when everybody has smartphones. Hiring a nurse to visit a person twice a day, using special notification applications for mobile phones, using special medical devices or smartwatches that detect lost pulse, or even more radical methods like moving to a nursing home. Does a contract with a cryonics organization help to discover the body faster? Well, it depends on the organization. Most cryonics organizations will provide you with a bracelet or a pendant with emergency information. But it's not something unique or valuable. You can order those from an online store for a couple of dollars. But Alcor CI and TomorrowBio provide special tracking applications for mobile devices. And this is something valuable. It's not like you put on a smartwatch and you're protected. But it's good additional means of protection, of course. Anything else except what I listed is on your own. Unfortunately, many clients think that as soon as they sign a contract, it's done. As a result, there are quite a lot of cases where a body was discovered after hours, days, or even weeks. Basically, all cryonics organizations admit this is a big problem. It is a very common mistake. Don't repeat it. Cryonics organizations will not do everything for you. Even if you sign a contract, take some time to prepare for body discovery. Okay, so what is the third biggest threat? It is an autopsy. Normally it takes up to 1 day to perform an autopsy, so it looks not so bad compared to the previous threats. However, in combination with other factors, autopsy often leads to straight freeze. Unfortunately, the autopsy is quite a popular outcome. On average, there is about 10% chance to receive an autopsy, depending on country, of course. Fortunately, this procedure is not free and the government doesn't like paying for it. And people in general don't like autopsies, so usually there is a legal way to avoid it. The best advice to avoid an autopsy would be to talk with a local lawyer. Laws are different in each country, so there is no universal advice. Lawyers who specialize in inheritance issues usually know what to do. The typical advice from a lawyer could be to specify in a will that you want to be cryopreserved, to get your medical history in one place so it could be provided to doctors and police if needed, and so on. Signing a contract with a cryonics organization will make your life a bit easier because they already know local laws and they already have the necessary documents. Plus, you will receive the status of a scientific research organ donor if you sign a contract. That might help to convince doctors not to perform an autopsy. Do employees from cryonics organizations help to avoid an autopsy and retrieve the body? Well, the result really depends on the people who are working in a cryonics organization and their motivation. I have read hundreds of reports from different cryonics organizations, and the reports feel very different. Sometimes employees just make a call, show documents, and the body is released. They have experience and they know how to talk to doctors. Sometimes employees really try their best to avoid an autopsy or make it faster to minimize the damage, but it doesn't work. Sometimes employees hear that autopsy is scheduled and it feels like they quickly give up and go find a hotel to sleep in until tomorrow. So the result is not guaranteed. Okay, we just finished the top 3 of the most dangerous things in cryopreservation. Can you see now why cryoprotection is not in the top 3? Because if there is no support from relatives, if the body is discovered too late, if an autopsy is performed, most probably there will be no cryoprotection anyway. In addition to this, the body will be severely damaged even before they straight freeze. In contrast to this, if everything went fine with the initial 3 steps and the body is in a good condition, but it is not possible to perform cryoprotection, it is not so bad. It is still possible to perform a chemical fixation and then sign a contract and perform cryoprotection. Okay, what is the next biggest threat? I guess it should be cryoprotection, but to keep order consistent, I will put initial cooling in the 4th position, because this is what you usually want to do after death certificate is retrieved and before cryoprotection. Of course, not covering a body or a head with water ice does not cause so much damage to the body as previous problems. However, there are still quite a lot of cases when a body was not cooled for hours. Quite often, relatives forget about doing initial cooling. Additionally, it's not hard to perform initial cooling when person dies at home, but there might be problems when the body is held by a medical institution or morgue staff. I already described initial cooling in my video about emergency straight freeze, so you can watch it here. Does a contract help with initial cooling? Not at all. I mean, in case the standby team arrives before death, they will perform initial cooling. However, death might happen unexpectedly, so it is a good idea not to rely on standby and to prepare some water ice and insta-cold packages. And maybe to talk to relatives to make sure they will not forget about it. The next threat is cryoprotection. This one is tricky. It is very hard to prepare cryoprotection. However, once it is properly prepared, it is quite hard to mess up. Don't get me wrong, cryonics organizations make errors in almost every case. Something was done too slowly, a battery was not replaced in time, a pump broke, it was not materials, and so on. Despite it might sound scary, these issues are usually fixed without serious impact on a patient. Temperatures at this point are so low that the body decomposes about 8 times slower than normal. Even slower when the temperature drops below zero. Many problems can appear during cryoprotection, but there is also plenty of time to fix these problems. You certainly want cryoprotection. If you're lucky to be in a proper country, if you're rich or young, the easiest way to receive cryoprotection would be to sign a contract with a cryonics organization. Unfortunately, in 2025, cryoprotection is still a gamble. It's not like you can sign a contract and forget about it. You might get lucky, and the standby team will start cryoprotection immediately after death. You might get unlucky, and the SST team will arrive 10 or 12 hours after the call, and it will be impossible to perform cryoprotection at all. So if you don't like the idea of gambling with your life, you can do extra to improve your chances. Depending on your situation, it might be creating a local SST team, it might be finding local specialists who can arrive in less than an hour and perform cryoprotection for you. It might be retrieving some basic equipment and cryoprotectants from your cryonics organization. Not all cryonics organizations support these initiatives, so it might be not so easy. But I think the benefit of not relying on luck is worth it. If you cannot afford a contract for any reason, be prepared for a quite challenging path and weeks or even months of work to set up cryoprotection. The sixth threat is temporary dry ice storage. Again, I already explained most of the things in the video about emergency straight freeze, so there is not much to add. If you have a contract, then you can relax. The SST team will do everything for you. If you don't have a contract, my biggest advice would be to set up a periodic delivery of dry ice so nobody will forget to replace it. The second advice would be to make sure a transition from temporary dry ice storage to long-term storage happens as soon as possible. The last threat, of course, is long-term storage. If you have a contract, you don't need to do anything. Cryonics organizations will do everything for you. They have pretty safe and reliable long-term storage. However, if you don't have a contract, the long-term storage is surprisingly also easy and safe. If you want to cryopreserve someone else, or you want to cryopreserve yourself and your relatives support you, you should be fine. Cryonics organizations try their best to convince people that cryonics do not exist outside of these organizations, and the only way to survive is to pay them money. Like, if you try to serve someone else on your own, you will certainly fail, because your relatives are evil and will betray you, because you will forget to refill the liquid nitrogen, because if you start to store someone, you have to do this until the end of your life, and your children have to do this after you. And at the end, no matter what you do, the dewar tank will break and bodies will be toughed. How does it work in reality? If you don't have enough money to sign a contract, you store a person in your own dewar and accumulate money. Once you have enough, you sign a contract and transfer the body to the new storage. That's all. Modern liquid nitrogen suppliers always have periodic delivery of liquid nitrogen, once a month for example, so you will never forget to refill it. A dewar might start leaking, but there are multiple ways to detect leakage, starting from cheap video cameras that you can put in storage to observe it from your phone, ending with different sensors that can be used to notify you when the nitrogen level is low. Oh, and most probably your parents or children are not evil and will not betray you. So, unless you believe in these scary propagandistic stories, you should be okay. There is one popular error related to long-term storage. For some reason, most people who want to organize cryopreservation on their own start doing this by preparing long-term storage. They are looking for a proper building for that, ordering a dewar, etc. This is actually the last thing you should do. In fact, if you properly prepare the other steps, you can completely ignore the preparation for long-term storage and return to this question when the body is already covered in dry ice. Okay, I think that's all. So what do you think about it? What things are most important for you in cryopreservation? What issues have you faced so far?